Be professional.
Hello, beautiful, beautiful ladies, and to all of the other beautiful humans tuning into this recording down the track, either immediately post Masterclass or at some point in the future. And welcome to the Powerful Partnerships Masterclass. I am really excited to be sharing on this topic. It's one that is close to my heart because I feel so passionately about the power of relationships and the beauty of relationships when they're really healthy, both personally and professionally. That, humans are, for me, and the way that we get to relate and connect and collaborate and co-create is where so much of the richness of life comes from. And uh, when we can be in healthy relationship with ourselves and therefore create healthy relationships externally, whether that's with your family members, with your spouse, with your other significant friends and people, or your professional relationships and partnerships, that the better your relationships are, the better your life is. So I'm very excited about this topic. And so, for those who don't know me, the lovely people here know me, but for those who are tuning in to this later and who I haven't connected with before, or you haven't been to one of my masterclasses before, I am Nicole Stewart, and I'm a performance and lifestyle consultant for ambitious and high achieving women. I support my clients to create transformations across three core areas: their self and soul, so their relationships with themselves, their relationships and sexuality. So that is your interpersonal relationships, and your relationship with your eros, your creative life force. So sexuality, not in terms of the act of sex, but sexuality as a relationship with your own sexual energy, your own sensual and sexual aliveness, your pleasure, and your creativity. And then lastly, money and results. So your capacity to create your external world and your life the way that you want it to be, and to create it from a place of uh, relaxation and softness and ease, as opposed to force and hustle, which is what a lot of us as uh, ambitious and high achieving women have sort of adopted. So these public masterclasses that you're in right now are always under one of those umbrellas. So, of course, talking about powerful partnerships, we are here for the relationships and sexuality evening. And the title of tonight's call was 3 Steps to Move from People Pleasing to Mutually Supportive Relationships. And a better word in hindsight might have been 3 phases, because there are so many steps that you can take to shift people pleasing patterns, certainly way more than I could cover inside like a short free masterclass session. But tonight, what I want to unpack and dig into with you is like 3 phases that you need to move through on your journey towards creating amazing relationships for yourself and releasing those sorts of people pleasing patterns. And you'll see why I've got 3 phases in a moment. And uh, the reason the reason this feels really important to cover as a real foundational piece. And that is because people pleasing is nuanced and way more complex than the way that most people treat it. Simply being told, well, why don't you say no more, is not enough at all. Yet often this pattern, the idea of being a people pleaser, is simplified into the idea that you can just resolve it by setting different boundaries. And while on one level that is really true, and if you set different boundaries, you're going to be rearranging your relationships in potentially more healthy ways, what that's really doing is shuffling the pattern around at the surface and not actually getting to the root cause to support you to understand why you're compelled to people please in the first place. Because when you resolve that root, whatever it is for you as an individual, the actual compulsion to people please or to fawn, as it can also be called, uh, dissolves, and it can be sort of extracted and healed from your nervous system. But when you simply change the behaviors on the surface by doing things like, I'm going to set different boundaries, uh, you'll continue to experience the underlying impulse to carry out those behaviors of people pleasing patterns. And you'll need to consistently override that impulse if you haven't done the work to go beneath the layer of behavior at the surface and touch the uh, parts of yourself in your psyche, in your nervous system, that are the wounds that you carry, that are the reason that you have the impulse to people please. And so this is why I've set this up in a 3-phase process, because it's not until phase 3 of what I'm going to share with you this evening that you actually make it to the stage of taking any actions, like doing the setting different boundaries thing. And that is the level where I see most people start this practice. It's like, oh, I'm going to set different boundaries. I'm going to say no more often. I'm going to like stand up for myself if somebody tries to like push me around or get me to do something that I don't want to do, etc. And of course, it can operate on much more subtle levels than that. But there's all of this beautiful foundational work that I see is incredibly important in preparing you to actually be able to take those actions differently and to make different choices for yourself in those situations where you're going to be feeling that impulse to people please, and you're going to be feeling the pull of those old behaviors and patterns that you know are unsupportive, that you know you want to change, but are embedded and hardwired in your nervous system and have become habits over many years of repetition. So what we're working with here is this beautiful animal that we live inside of, with a nervous system that embeds habits and repeated patterns so that we can survive more effectively in the world. But often those habits and patterns that it adopts are what you could describe as maladaptive. So they helped you survive when you were a little person, and this is often where the pattern of people pleasing comes from. If you've been in an environment where you needed to please your caregivers, etc., that the little person, the clever little adaptive brain, learns to be a certain way, learns to please the caregivers, learns to uh, override their own needs and desires in favor of ensuring that other people in the environment are happy and have what they need. And it's a clever way of surviving and securing resources. And when I say resources, I mean belonging and love. And when you're a little person, a little child, securing that belonging from your parents is a matter of life and death. And so that's the level. I'm saying that, and it sounds a bit like somber, but I'm saying that to illustrate that when these patterns were first laid down in the nervous system, the people pleasing behavior, which is really just a label that we can put onto a set of behaviors that look like putting other people before yourself, was a clever way to survive, was a clever way to secure love and belonging and resources and to ensure your survival as a little person. But as you grow and you mature and you become an adult woman in the world, and you want to have intimate partnerships, and maybe you want to have a family, and you want to have a professional life, and you want to have friendships that are really alive and vibrant, if you are existing inside of a system that says, I need to override my needs and make sure that that spouse or that boss or my team members are happy and satisfied and have everything that they need, and I will make sure that that happens at the expense of my own well-being, that's not sustainable. And that is a maladaptive habit or pattern. And so we're shining light into some potentially uncomfortable corners here if you're tuning in or watching live. And so just really also want to name that this is it is a really clever adaptive thing that the system learns, and that a very clever way to survive. And there's also no shame in this. As an adult woman, it can be frustrating to notice when you can see that you are behaving, and showing up in a way that is maybe not in your best interests. And it can be easy to slip into some frustration with yourself, and judgment of yourself, and criticism of yourself around this. And because like self-love and self-respect and women's rights is becoming such a more prevalent conversation, which is so important and so needed, it's wonderful. Like it's such a celebration that those conversations are occurring. And if we're not careful, the like sneaky little insidious message can get adopted or picked up that like, oh, if I don't really love myself, and if I don't really if I don't have this gloriously perfect relationship with myself, then that's something to be a bit ashamed of. And people pleasing is one of those things that can feel a bit frustrating and embarrassing and disappointing if it's something that gets carried out. So lovely women on the call. And if you're tuning into this, please just reflect. I've got some questions, and this is just an opportunity for you to reflect on the impact of this sort of pattern in your life and the lives of the women around you. So just by a show of hands, who here has experienced themselves to do some people pleasing, either personally or professionally? Me too. Yeah, totally. Thank you for being honest. Now, keep your hands up or raise your hands again if you feel like you notice yourself doing this on a regular basis. Excellent. Yeah. I love that you two are sitting together and like calling each other out. It's really cute. Thank you. So have you then noticed yourself ever have judgment or disappointment, or some like self-criticism around seeing that pattern and recognizing it as something that you'd like to change?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's something that I often look at in hindsight. So,
Mm.
being in a relationship and then exiting that relationship, you take a look back and you can see, well, these are the behaviours that I had there, and I
Mm.
don't want to replicate them.
Mm. Mm. With
So,
2020 hindsight, hey?
absolutely. And yet, I have been known to do it more than once,
Yeah.
but I'm getting better at not, and I get a certain amount of support in that activity as well. Not mentioning.
Well done. Well done. Yeah, it's beautiful to hear about your journey, and sometimes it can take many, many repetitions and cycles of like, oh my gosh, I did that thing again, and having to sit with like the bitter taste of disappointment and the sting of having abandoned yourself, and knowing that that's what you've done, that's what you've chosen in that instance. um, yeah, that aches. and and I also really believe that those of us who carry this wound, carry this pattern, sitting in and being able to feel and be honest about, like, oh my gosh, that really hurts, is so important. Is so important.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's another person here, so I'm going to let them in. Hello, lovely Carmel. Can you hear me? I'm going to pop Carmel on mute, and hopefully she can hear us and is ready for action. So, Carmel, and anybody who is listening along, we are just asking some questions. I'm asking you some questions to support you to bring consciousness to your own people pleasing patterns, to the way that people pleasing has maybe played out in your life. And my question that I've just asked was, have you experienced yourself to have some, like, disappointment or frustration or self-criticism directed at yourself in recognizing your people pleasing patterns? And it was a pretty resounding yes from lovely women who are here. So just reflecting on that for yourself, if you are tuning into this replay, it's like, these are really, really normal patterns, but us being honest about the ache and the pain of what we are choosing for ourselves in that situation is really important. Now, lastly, my final question is, have you known that you wanted to change these patterns, but despite that, been unable to make the changes that you really want in the moment?
In my scenario, yes, I was aware, but
Mm.
as I said before, I had slipped back into patterns. The time that I
Mm.
started to be able to consciously change those behaviours effectively is when I lived on my own for a few years, because I'd always been
Mm.
in family, then in relationships, so I'd never had
Mm.
time out on my own.
Yeah,
Once I had time out to reflect,
yeah,
um, then I was able to manage those behaviours and change them
yeah,
in a
yeah.
more uninterrupted kind of way.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, well done. And taking space, like creating distance between you and the triggers,
Correct.
is such a healthy way of, like, getting some distance to give you room to reflect on what's going on for you and what do you really want. If you've always existed inside of a family unit, or existed inside of a community where you are, there's real beauty in the, like, gorgeous tapestry of communal living with big families or friends, though the shadow is you can lose yourself, as you have described. Yeah, it's like, if that's the ecosystem that you've always been inside of, caring for, and so many women I work with who are facing this challenge, it's like they've got such big hearts and they're so caring that sometimes that tips into being out of balance. So, yeah, thank you for being honest. So, I would love to support you now, whether you're here with me live or whether you're watching this as a recording, to get into your body. Now, a lot of the work that I do, if you haven't come across me before, is centered in the body awareness, in rewiring and repatterning your foundational blueprints, which means working with your nervous system and your soma, or your body. And so through accessing the body, we can access different body memories. We can get directly in contact with the nervous system, which is the thing that has us, which, like, carries the impulses to do those people pleasing patterns. And so by bringing awareness and presence into your body, you are growing your capacity to sustain presence during situations that in the past might have you abandon yourself and people please. And so that might be like a woman walks into the room and she's angry and she's like, ugh. And for you, the system goes, oh my gosh, that's my like really angry mum. And what does that person need? I just need to fix it. Like I need to make it better for them. And I'm totally making this up. It's so different for everyone. It might be a really angry male person walking in that triggers your system, or somebody looking at you in a certain way during a meeting at work, or there are so many different things that can have our nervous system go, oh, red alert. Oh my gosh, like we're about to get in trouble, or there's about to be a problem and I need to fix it, or to be on the front foot with um, discerning what the need is in this other person, and meeting it to alleviate this pressure. And unfortunately, when your nervous system gets triggered by whatever your beautiful, unique triggers are, because we're all so unique, uh, sometimes you don't have conscious choice. Yeah, it's like you get hijacked and all of a sudden you're on autopilot and you're doing the things that you really wish you weren't doing. You're saying yes to the extra work that you really wish you weren't saying yes to, or you're whatever it is that you're doing, at, and like overreaching and extending beyond past yourself. So we're going to bring some awareness into your body and awareness to your people pleasing patterns in an embodied way, in terms of how the sensations in your body feel. Because having more awareness of this will support you, like I said, to maintain presence in those situations where the angry woman walks into the room and you might notice then, oh my gosh, that's those sensations. Huh. And so what we're doing right now is walking into phase one of transforming your people pleasing patterns and moving into creating mutually supportive relationships. And this is really a foundational level. And it looks like being honest with yourself, being really honest about, oh my gosh, I can see that I'm really, really giving of myself in a way that isn't really in my highest good in that instance, or in these instances. And so being really honest with yourself allows you to get on the ground. And one of those things is, of course, to know what it is that you're actually dealing with, to be able to map those sensations in your body. So whether you're tuning into the replay or whether you're here with me live, I'd just love to invite you to close your eyes and take a couple of nice big deep breaths. And relaxing your abdominal muscles, just letting your belly be soft, letting your belly button hang away from your spine, letting your jaw be soft. Just bringing your awareness inwards and noticing what's here in this moment. Noticing what thoughts are floating around your head, noticing what feelings, emotional feelings you might be carrying, and also what sensations are present in your body and where. And we're just noticing all of this with curiosity. There's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. If you get a bit distracted, that's okay. You can just bring yourself back. Nice, soft abdominal muscles, big deep breaths, inflating your belly like a balloon. And then exhaling, relaxing. Even letting your lips part a little bit, supporting your tongue to be soft in your throat and your jaw to be nice and soft. Letting out a bit of a sigh on your next exhale. And so, what I'm guiding you through there are some of the key little tricks and ways that we can support your nervous system and your body to relax with that soft jaw and parted lips, the soft abdominal muscles, your belly button hanging away from your spine. We're sending all of these messages to your body. Hey, it's really safe to soften. And so, again, just doing one more scan and noticing what's present, what sensations are here. Maybe there's some leftover tension from your day, but just there's no good or bad. What's here? And now, I want to invite you to bring to mind and call to your recollection a time, either a significant memory or a time recently where you can remember doing some people pleasing, where you know that you let that pattern jump in the driver's seat and take over. And had you show up and maybe overgive in a way that is not all that supportive. And just remembering that experience, remembering that time where either that significant memory or that recent memory. And I want you to notice what changes in your system, what changes in your body, what changes in the quality of thoughts in your mind. What sensations are different? Is there like a contraction in your belly or a heaviness in your chest, or does your mind go a bit like, do you go a bit blank in your mind? Just noticing. Again, there's no right or wrong. We're doing this as an information gathering adventure. We're just getting curious. What happens in my system when people pleasing is present? There's no judgment. And so I want you to do another scan now of your body, of your system, noticing the sensations in your torso and your hips and your legs, the quality of emotional sensation that's present, the quality of the thoughts that are here. And we're just going to do a bit of a scan so you can sort of take a bit of a snapshot of what's alive in you in this moment. And as much as you can, sort of committing that to memory. And if you're up for sharing, uh, anybody who's here on the call, I would love to hear about what you noticed changed in your body when you brought that memory of people pleasing to the front of your mind, if anything. And there's no pressure to share.
Doing the need to please. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good boundaries. I'm not going to share because I don't want to. It's great. Beautiful. And so we've got a nice, intimate little group of us here on the call for anybody tuning into the replay. And so totally understand not wanting to necessarily share into this intimate space. But remembering that sensation for yourself, because that is like a little, when you're driving and you're like maybe driving in an area where you haven't been for a while and you're driving down the street and you pass the church and you're like, oh my gosh, I know, I'm sure I have to turn somewhere after the church. And it's like this big landmark of a like, hey, something's about to happen. You need to turn soon, or the destination is soon. And you're like, oh, this is familiar. that's what we're trying to do by having this little, just a tiny little, like, dip of your toe into the water of connecting with your physiology when it comes to your people pleasing pattern. Because whatever sensations showed up for you, whether there was some emotional content or whether there was some big physical sensations or whether you got a bit numb and sort of felt a bit dissociated, excuse me, whatever happened for you is like, it's like the church on that drive. It's like the thing that can go, hey, when those sensations show up in your body in the future, or even just you notice the beginning of them starting to creep in, you can go, hold on a second. I feel like maybe I feel the way that I've felt in the past when I've betrayed my own boundaries, or I've abandoned myself, or I've given too much, or I haven't listened to my deeper knowing, etc. And so our body is such a crucial tool. And so we're here in phase one, we're laying the foundations, we're getting honest. Yeah, you've now got a bit of a map in your physiology for what your people pleasing pattern feels like. Now, the final thing in this first stage is to bring in support. Find, like, share this journey with other people, and it can feel a little bit like a 12-step meeting, right? It's like, hi, I'm Nicole and I'm a people pleaser. Hi, Nicole. But, it can, I'm being playful, but it's so important to be honest. Yeah, there's nothing to be ashamed of here, but bring people into your journey. Let them know. Let your you beautiful women here together tonight. Yeah, let your partner know. Let your trusted friends at work know. Let your friends in your life know. Speak to your actual sister if you have one about this. Your family, whoever it is that feels appropriate, and say, I recognize that when X, Y, and Z happens, because remember, we spoke about the fact that your unique nervous system, your unique life experiences, your unique triggers, when X, Y, Z happens, I feel such a compulsion to just do whatever I have to do and say whatever I have to say to, like, make that situation go away. And I find it really stressful, and I'm really disappointed that I abandoned myself in that way, and I really want to change it. Will you be a support person for me, please? It's as simple as that. And then you get to design that relationship however you want to, right? You can say, like, oh, I know always, when I catch up with my family for Sunday lunch, it's like just an absolute fest of fest of overgiving. So I'm going to message you after I've been to Sunday lunch or during Sunday lunch and be like, I'm staying strong. Yes. Like, set that relationship up in whatever way it serves you. And it can be as deep and, like, woven into your world and solid and there, or it can be as spacious and non-intrusive as you desire it to be when you're designing that relationship. So bringing in support. Don't try and do this alone. Don't try and shift these sorts of patterns all by yourself. It can be done, though it is something that will quite likely take longer and be a sort of lonely journey, as is life, I would say, if we don't have wonderful people who can see us and love us through whatever we're journeying around us. So the second phase, we've spoken about phase one, which was about laying new foundations, or laying the foundations for this transformation, for this move. And phase two is all about being able to see and perceive new possibilities. Because if you can't see a new reality, a new possibility for yourself, then of course it's going to be really hard to move towards creating it. So I want to make some suggestions now and invite you to reflect on these things for yourself. And these would also be excellent journaling prompts if you wanted to go deeper with any of them. So I'm going to send out the recording. If you're listening to the recording, that's great. You can pause between these you can pause between these inquiries and do some journaling if you feel like that'd be supportive. We'll come back to this later. Obviously, we don't have time to go through that journaling process now, but this is really around seeing the way that people pleasing permeates your personal and professional relationships and getting honest about that in the way that we have in phase one, bringing compassion and acceptance to yourself during the witnessing of these patterns and behaviors. So you've gotten honest, you're bringing it to you're raising it into into your conscious awareness, and the invitation is to actively be bringing compassion and acceptance to yourself when you notice this pattern playing out. And it's so important to be able to stand in a place of curiosity, not judgment. Like, oh, that's interesting. I really, I really didn't want to do that. And I just said yes. Interesting. What's that about? Hmm. And if you can bring that like curious inquiry tone into the way that you relate with yourself when this pattern comes up, you're not laying on a whole extra like weight of pain and shame and disappointment in yourself that can be a natural thing to arise and to get stuck in if you are judging and you're harsh with yourself. So curiosity instead of judgment. And then, and these are your journaling inquiries, what if that was different? You're seeing the truth of what is here today. You're seeing the truth of the way this pattern plays out for you personally or professionally, whatever it is. You're seeing the reality of maybe how people pleasing inhibits you from having the truly, like the true expression of the relationships that you would like to. And you're holding compassion and acceptance for yourself during that noticing. And now you get to ask the question, well, what if that was different? What if that moment when you catch yourself or you see in retrospect, because 2020 hindsight, as we've spoken about, is a thing. When you see in retrospect, what if I didn't just automatically say yes there? What if I didn't prioritize those people above me? What if I didn't hold my tongue in that instance, but I was honest about what I really felt and what I really thought? What if I was to wait before giving my answer to that question and request or let the person know that I was just going to take some time to decide? What if I could ask for what I wanted instead of saying that it didn't matter to me or that I don't mind? What if I could be honest there and speak my truth? And these are just, again, we're coming to these questions with curiosity, not rigidity, not like, now I have to do it this way. This is just a like, oh, what would life be like? And I'd love to invite you to take the time to answer that question for yourself because it's a really powerful one. What would life be like if I didn't just insert your pattern here? I listed off some examples just then, but whatever is relevant for you. What would life be like? What would my professional relationship with my team at work be like if I didn't do that particular thing every time I got asked to step in and pick up someone else's slack? What would my relationship with my beloved be like if I asked for the things that I want in support from them rather than just silently making sure they have everything that they need? There's no pressure to do these things yet. To be really clear, here in phase 2, we're still in the like building a new possibility, or like the seeing of a new possibility in yourself. And the more curiosity and like, oh, I wonder what would that be like, that you can bring and begin to see this new reality open up. And it's like in a parallel universe, there's another version of you that exists where this isn't a pattern that she plays out. And what is her life like? And what's it like for her to be so fully supported by her team? What's it like for her to have a really healthy relationship with her kids where she doesn't feel taken advantage of, etc.? So that's a little visioning and brainstorming process for you to explore. Now, I just want to do a check-in and make sure that you're with me. I'm about to dive into phase 3, which is our final phase, and we're about like it's talking here about actually taking some actions and taking the steps to make the changes that you want to see in your relationships. Are there any questions so far? Are you with me?
Just listening. It's great. It is good. It's sort of like one of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's particularly hair on my face. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm glad that you're finding it relatable.
Very much so.
That this is not as much as we are all inside of our own internal experience and individuals in that way, this is not a load that we carry alone by any means. And so, it's relatable because it's so universal, it's so shared, which I hope in my sharing of that can bring some, it's not just me. It can be very insular to be inside of your own experience and peering out at other people who appear to have these things worked out. And particularly as ambitious individuals, women who put pressure on ourselves to be more and to create amazing lives for ourselves. Though those are wonderful traits, the sneaky shadow of that is that there's that perfectionist, that expectation that everybody else is further along the journey than we are. And that's such an illusion. Yeah, it's like so many people share these very same experiences and worldviews. And the reason it's resonating and the reason I'm able to rattle off all these examples is because I sit in rooms with so many women who are like, yep, that's me, yep, that's me, yep, that's me. And it's a thing that we all are sharing. So we're up to phase 3, and this is where we actually get to start implementing some changes and taking some actions. You've done this beautiful internal work so far of getting honest with yourself and becoming more familiar with those people-pleasing sensations in your body, bringing in some support networks, being able to really witness and see the patterns playing out in your life and bring compassion and care to yourself when you notice those patterns and begin to really unpick and unravel. What if life was different? And now we're going to start actually doing the things that you're imagining. That question that you're asking yourself of like, oh, what if I was, what if I didn't just say yes in that situation? And you might have a whole list of things that that you see yourself as doing in your people-pleasing traits, and therefore a whole list of things that you can see that are like, oh, what if like life would feel this way, or my relationship with my husband would feel this way if I was able to change that particular pattern. And you might have a whole list of them. And what we want to do is choose just a few to knock off to begin with. Yeah. And this is the sort of thing that if you look at that whole list, and if you look at your people pleasing pattern and it's a really big one, and you try and like eat the whole elephant at once, you end up choking and a bit overwhelmed. And so we're going to chew on the elephant like like one bit at a time, and chunk this down into a way that feels palatable for you and feels tackleable for you. And again, my invitation is to use that beautiful body of yours to tell you what that is. Yeah, for some of you, depending on like your capacity and how severe this is as a challenge for you, might be able to look at that list and be like, I can take all of that on and feel really relaxed and confident in your body. But if you look at that list and your body feels overwhelmed and you feel like, oh my god, how am I ever going to do that, then chunk it down, make it bite sized. Bring your support person, your support sister, your actual sister, your friends, whoever it is that you're supported by, that we set that relationship up in phase one. Bring that person in and let them know specifically what you're trying to change. This has such a powerful function, because when you are honest about what's going on and you're like, and you tell people the truth about the way that you want to create change and the reason and the pattern underneath, it's so powerful to detoxify shame. If you're feeling like, oh my god, I can't possibly tell people that in that situation that's how I feel. But if you can tell that trusted person, that support sister, whoever it is for you, and be honest with them, it detoxifies shame. It sort of, shame thrives in secrecy. And so it brings that into conscious awareness, and it gives you incredible power to lean into that relationship and say, hey, I'm this is how it feels in that situation. This is my thoughts. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like I feel so sad, and I really want this to be different. And this is all serving you to build what I describe as internal resources. You're building your capacity in your nervous system and in your body to maintain presence when you find yourself in that situation, in that triggering situation in your life again. And then you have all of this extra yummy like deposits and in your resource bank that you've built up. You've got this amazing relationship that you can lean on. You've intentionally given yourself all this compassion and acceptance. You've brought awareness to this. You've spent time contemplating it and bringing it into your awareness. And so when you find yourself in that challenging situation again, it's nowhere near as likely to take you by surprise. You are what I would describe as far more resourced to stay present with yourself in that moment and make a slightly different decision. Yeah. And notice that I said make a slightly different decision. We're not going for perfection. Yeah. So my next invitation is to really celebrate your little wins. Yeah. If you've always been someone that just would say yes automatically to your team members, I remember I was coaching this woman once, and she was running a dental practice, and consistently all the time would have team members come in and say, hey, I want to have some time off. And she'd just say yes, because she wanted to please her team members. And then it would give her all of these awful like rostering problems to deal with, because she was just trying to keep her staff happy, because dentistry has such a high staff turnover. And for her, it was such a breakthrough that when a staff member came in and said, I want time off, for her to go, I'm going to look at the roster and I'll get back to you, and to not give them an answer on the spot. And to just do that, it wasn't even about saying no, it was just about delaying, delaying having to have the challenging conversation. And that was such a huge breakthrough for her. And it gave her back so much power, because then she could recenter herself, because in that moment she just got all like flustered and hot and felt like, oh my gosh, I want to please this team member, they've worked so hard for me, so of course I'm just going to say yes. And then later be like, why did I do that? Damn it. It's not like we're stuffed now in a schedule, like a rostering way. And so her being able to really celebrate that she said to her staff members, no, I'm going to take some time to look at the roster and I'll get back to you, was such a win, and gave her so much, just supported her so much to then recenter herself and go back to them with a really clear, logical yes or no based on having actually looked at the roster and knowing where she was at in terms of her human resources at that time. And notice that I'm sharing this story of my client and talking about her being flustered in those moments, because remember, this is a triggering situation for your nervous system. There is a reason that you have learnt to fawn, to people please in that situation, and it is a survival mechanism. And so I really invite you to celebrate those little wins and those little incremental changes, and to bring a tremendous amount of compassion and understanding to yourself, because this will be uncomfortable when you first start making these changes. Yeah, it is going to feel sort of like you're dying. And I'm saying that and being a little bit playful, it sounds very dramatic, but it's actually true. When your body does its big flight fight response and you feel all of the, like, clammy armpits and heart palpitations and blank mind and whatever the other sensations are that happen in your body, it is literally your whole flight fight system going, oh my gosh, red alert, like you have to get out of this situation. Yeah, it's your body trying to save your life. It's a very clever evolutionary feature. Not that helpful if you just want to tell your staff members, actually, I'm going to look at the roster and get back to you about whether you can have that holiday, because that's not a life or death situation, though it will feel that way when you begin to make these changes, when you begin to set different boundaries with your children, when you begin to, oh my gosh, like with like a trembling heart to say, like, this is what I really want to your spouse. It feels terrifying. And and that's because there's a reason you haven't been saying those things, and it is a survival mechanism that you're facing and that you're unraveling. So being kind to yourself, having a tremendous amount of understanding with yourself when you slip up and maybe slip back into old habits, but being able to really have space for it to feel uncomfortable. And that is the third stage, is really about taking those new actions, but with a tremendous amount of care for yourself, bringing in the support that you need and being prepared for it to be difficult. There is no such thing as a easy, magical quick fix to unraveling people pleasing patterns. And I wish there was, because that would be wonderful for all of you, for me as well. But that doesn't exist. And so I'm emphasizing how important it is uh, for you to have space for it to be hard, but it's okay that it's hard. Just because it's challenging and it feels like there's all these big sensations in your body doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean that you are not going to succeed. It's actually very normal. So welcoming those uncomfortable sensations, it probably means that you're right in the hot zone and you're setting exactly the new boundaries that you need to be setting. If you're like, oh, this is awful, that's a good sign that you're in the right place and that you're headed in the direction of challenging those patterns that have been so, like, baked into your nervous system over many years of repetition. So that is our third and final phase. And I want to open to you, lovely ladies, and just check in and see if there's any questions or any reflections of what you noticed for yourself. I acknowledge that we are a little bit over time. We did start a fraction late night. I do want to finish this up soon, but if there are any questions or comments, I would love to hear them before we draw to a close for the night.
I guess I've got two observations I've made about myself over time.
Mm.
One was that in historic relationships, I've been very much a pleaser. And it occurred to me after a very nice relationship only lasted 12 months. And at the end of it, I reflected on it and thought that that person that I was involved with never actually really got to know me,
Mm.
because I was giving them a perception of me that wasn't really real.
Mm.
So, that wasn't consciously lying to me, but I was in a lot of ways. So that was one thought. And
Mm.
another is one time when I was doing some heavy duty people pleasing, and it didn't work out anyway. What I was trying to do
Mm.
wasn't pleasing.
Mhm.
And so I stopped, and it was such a relief
Mm.
because I've been treading down that path for a while. And to finally stop going down that path
Mm.
was quite a relief.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's a good thing to be able to stop sometimes.
All the time, I might venture. It's yeah, they're really brave reflections. Thank you. I really appreciate your sharing, and yeah, it sounds like you've been in the thick of this journey and unraveling for a while, and so yeah, I really celebrate those big leaps that you've taken and the seeing that it's true. Like if you're just trying to be whoever that other person needs you to be, then they're never going to get to know the essence of you, whoever you are. And that's such a sad loss.
And,
Um,
I must admit, I do have a very supportive partner. He's quite demanding
mhm.
of who I am, not not who I might perceive to be.
Yeah, yeah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. May we all have those partners in our lives. Yeah, yeah. Well, beautiful ladies, thank you so much for being here with me this evening. If you're tuning into this replay, thank you so much for registering for tonight's masterclass and for tuning in. I know that there's a number of ladies in different continents that have signed up for tonight, so we'll be watching the replay tomorrow and are probably fast asleep right now. So blessings to your adventure of unraveling people pleasing. And it would be my absolute delight to support you to continue to do this work for yourselves. And so, if you received some gems from tonight's call, if you notice some sensations in yourself that made you go, "Oh, I'd really like to change this," then let's have a conversation. And I'll reach out to everybody after the masterclass anyway, just to find out how you're going. But there's some opportunities there for us to do some deeper work together if that feels right. So happy transformation, and may you all have beautiful, mutually supportive relationships in your life, both personally and professionally. And I hope to see you all again on another masterclass or in other work with me or in life in general soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks heaps. It was great.
Good night, guys.
See you later. Bye.